Hi, good morning, and this is Pat May with a Legal Play.
Good morning, Hap, and I am Chelsea Alazzi. Today, Hap, we are talking about offers in compromise.
Yes.
So what is an offer in compromise?
Well, an offer in compromise, so the term is broader, but specifically we're talking about an IRS procedure where a taxpayer can make an offer in compromise.
Right. And there's specific forms that are actually labeled offer in compromise.
There are. Basically, it says that, the IRS has imposed a tax or assessed a tax for which the taxpayer, for one reason or another, doesn't think they should have to or are able to pay all or any of that tax.
Right, right. And so there's actually three types of offer in compromise, but there's two main ones we're going to talk about today.
Right, two that are common.
And the most common one, I think, is where there has been an audit or there has been an assessment. The taxpayer and the IRS both agree some tax does need to be paid, but it's the question of the ability to pay everything that the IRS is asking for.
And some people have huge IRS debts for various reasons, more than they would reasonably be expected to pay.
Right. They just don't have the income or the other assets to be able to pay that off. And so an offer in compromise would be saying, okay, I recognize this liability I have to you, IRS. I can't pay the full amount, but I'd like to offer you this much.
Correct. And there are several ways that's done. One is there's sort of two tests of ability to pay. One is sort of how much do you have in the way of assets today that you could sell or liquidate or somehow use to borrow against in order to pay a certain amount of tax. Then sort of how much money do you make over and above what is sort of necessary for you and your family to get by on. And you kind of do those two calculations. It's kind of the algebra.
Right.
That you determine how much you should have to pay.
And the IRS has a form for that as well. 433B.
433A, individual, 433B for a business.
Got it.
That's a little tricky because if you have an individual that has, a business like a sole proprietorship, may come out on Schedule C, or perhaps on a 1120S or 1065. The taxpayer has to do one a 433A to submit where they are in terms of the assets they have and what income they have, and then also business, what assets does the business have, and what sort of income does the business have.
Yeah, and the 433 is basically a worksheet saying, okay, we're gonna put in all of these and kind of calculate
it is an official IRS form, but you're right. I mean, it has various lines, and you put in, how much you make from dividend and interest, and your salary, and what are your expenses for, home mortgage, taxes, rent, medical, whatever your expenses are, and that kind of all goes into this equation that the IRS has.
And so what's interesting, Hap, is I was doing one of these for a client recently, and he doesn't work. He has no income. He lives with his girlfriend, and this guy must just have some really shining qualities that his girlfriend pays everything, and he can, contribute to the household, but he himself does not earn any income and doesn't really have any assets of his own. The IRS doesn't care about his furniture, his clothes, or his guitar. It's mostly what is his wage, what is his salary. And we filled out this form for him, and even after calculating everything, all of his assets, his income, it comes down to zero. He's got zero that he himself can really offer.
Given a certain current station in life.
Correct.
He is not able to make payments.
Correct. And he's not married. They can't go after the girlfriend. She's not on the hook for his tax liability. And so we fill out the 433 for him, and it comes out to, he makes $0 and has more debts than he has income. But yet with his 656, his offer in compromise, the IRS says, you have to offer us more than zero. So right. He had to come up with an amount, which may involve, having to go to your friends and family and ask for a loan. Just to kind of say, I need the IRS off my back. Here, IRS, here's what I'm offering, and I'm actually getting it from friends and family. It's a loan.
Which highlights a lot of times the problem, sometimes you have people that, bad things have happened that they just have gotten, had made some money, but they had to pay some taxes, but later on in the intervening years ran into some problems, had to spend money, to live, sometimes to go to school, sometimes to handle medical things.
Right.
Sometimes somebody who has made a lot of money suddenly gets hurt, injured, sick, and is no longer able to continue to do what they did, and they racked up some general bills, credit card bills, doctor bills, things like that, as well as the tax liability that they just weren't able to pay. So they owe some money. And we go through this calculation that says, okay, if I liquidated, all of the assets I could liquidate, I'd have $10,000. And if I took all of the income I make less the expenses that are sort of allowed to live with, I could get over the next 5 years, test, 60-month test. That's $20,000. So the math says $20,000. I don't have $20,000. And that's the problem. And that's where you get, okay, well, will my mom give me, $20,000? Will my I mean, is there somebody else out there that will give me $20,000? Sometimes maybe if what my assets say is I've got equity in a house, which I could borrow money for. Sometimes that's usable to come up with this $20,000, whatever the number is. I'm talking about it. But figuring out how to fund an offering sometimes it's harder than actually try to figure the math out, figure out the
number. Oh, right.
And negotiate.
Of course.
And there are ways to pay it, over installment payments. But given that, basically the IRS has sort of done this math and they figure that basically you got to pay all of your disposable income, over a 5-year period. It can be tricky, to figure out how to do that. Now, it is advantageous to try to do that. I mean, there's some people in a situation where I know for a while I'm not going to make some money, but there is still a future out there for me. So rather than letting this IRS debt linger for 10 years, and in the meantime having them garnish bank accounts and put liens on my house, and make it hard for me to get a job with the wages get paid to me because I get a wage garnishment. I mean, avoiding all of that collection activity, you can do this and get the problem over in 5 years.
Right, and that's the case with this particular client. I mean, his situation right now is as I kind of described it. But as you said, he did have some personal issues that got him into this situation in the first place, and he's kind of at a standstill because he's got this IRS debt looming over and keeping him from moving forward because he doesn't want any steps, in a positive direction to be undermined by then having to pay out to the IRS.
Right. It does give you some breathing room. I mean, the process with the IRS kind of lays off of you. It also, during the process of saying you're going to do a offer compromise, and starting to file the paperwork, you get a little bit of breathing.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are waiting for something to happen. Waiting to win the lottery. I mean, I hear that a lot. As soon as I win the lottery, whether that's the IRS or my legal bills, but also that somebody, I mean, has a relative that at some point in time is going to die and leave some money. Maybe and I've seen this before too, where we have somebody who really wants to get married, but their potential spouse says, I love you. I want to marry you, but I don't want to marry your IRS debt.
Yeah.
And I realize that there are ways I can shield myself from, but still, if we're going to do joint tax returns, joint property together, and maybe be in business together, you have some family business, it'd be nice if you could clean that up.
Right.
And so the potential spouse says, okay, goes through the 433, I'm single. The source of my money is what little I've got, and something my fiance is going to pay me, to do that. And we get the offer compromise approved, make the payment, and then we go to chapel.
And he can move on with his life.
Yeah. Or she. I mean,
now that's if you acknowledge that you owe a liability to the IRS.
Right. However, reluctance that acknowledgement.
Correct. You're in the happier camp if you can fill out the 656L, the doubt as to liability, saying, I actually doubt I owe you this money, IRS. I
Yes.
think you're wrong.
Yes, yes, and that is a different procedure.
Mhm.
Where, and there are cases where IRS has made an assessment for which there is a defense. I mean, I had a case recently where a school teacher that I knew that had been my daughter's school teacher and that's 20 years ago. She was my daughter's school teacher, somebody I've kept up with. And she had sold her house and moved away. And she had bought her house. She had less than a $250,000 gain on the house. So the house was not taxable. The proceeds of the house were not taxable or were exempt from taxation in the process. So she didn't owe any tax on that house, the sale of that house. But the title company, when they do the transaction, sent in this thing that says she got, $500,000 in proceeds from a sale.
Okay.
And she'd actually moved out of the country. She's not an American. And so she's one, not savvy on that, and two, I mean, was not getting that information. I mean, had ceased filing American tax returns because she didn't have any U.S. income. But nonetheless, for that year, she gets this 1099 that says you owe a bunch of money, and then gets us an assessment from the IRS saying you owe a bunch of money. I mean, basically, it took $500,000, and said that's income. You pay tax on it. So she owed over $100,000 taxes, which, I mean, she's a retired school teacher. She can't pay that.
Right.
And so she remembered me, the lawyer father of one of her former students that got a hold of me. And we went through the process. We were able to establish the fact, no, she had basis in the property because she bought it and something. So that's the whole $500,000 gain, and the difference between what she paid for it. There's improvements on it as well. And the sales price was less than $250,000. It was her principal residence, so she's entitled to an exclusion of the first $250,000. So long and the short of it, we were able to prove to the IRS that she didn't have that, and were successful in saying, she's not liable for that in the process. Now, there was a couple of dividends that she missed, like bank dividends for interest, stuff like that they did assess her for, and she paid the tax on that in the process. But the housing transaction, the house sale transaction, she was not liable for, and we were able to establish the fact she was not liable for, and thus she didn't have to pay tax.
Yes. And we have a current case we're working on too, where simply just someone had
a mistake made in interpreting a 1099,
poorly handwritten.
So basically took a dollar sign and took it as an 8. Instead of having a 5-digit income, had a high 6-digit income, and they've tried to make the assessment on that, and it has been more difficult than I would have thought something like that would be to fix. But after talking to the IRS, we have at their suggestion, we have gone through and started the process of making an offer compromise.
Doubt as to
liability. Yeah, I don't owe the money. Not I can't pay.
Right.
Which would also be true.
He can't pay.
In this case, but it's not liable.
Right.
If you own the case, that there is significant doubt as to liability, that's the route to go.
Yeah.
Because if you can prove to them you don't owe the money, then we don't have to talk about this. Oh, I make this much, and I have this much in assets. You just don't owe the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's a third type of offering compromise that.
Yeah, and I was wondering whether we even bring this up or not. And I'm not. It says effective administration. Yes, I owe the money. Yes, I can pay it, but for some reason, it is inefficient for the government to come after me for it. Now, it's hard to imagine, what that is generally, and the general sense to what I get, because these are very rarely made, very rarely accepted by the IRS. And it's basically, I'm gonna die tomorrow, leave me alone. I have some sort of terminal illness, for which I shouldn't have to deal with these type of problems. Or the taxpayer made it. A taxpayer representative represents if somebody's about to levy the bank account of somebody who's in hospice. Um, is an example of what that might actually be.
Okay. Well, the big takeaway I'm getting though is if you have the IRS coming after you saying you owe this much, and either you think that's incorrect that you don't, or that you feel there's some reason you shouldn't have to pay it or pay that much, you have options.
You have,
and we can help you with those options.
Yes. And I mean, the alternative is that if you pay, there is also a 10-year statute of collections in some cases. People make through. There are some bankruptcy options, some kind of taxes. Other taxes are not. A lot of times we see these public comment cases, payroll tax cases. Somebody who was the responsible party for a business who had payroll taxes, and somebody didn't get paid, gets assessed personally. Those are not. But you can go through when doubt is to liability. I mean, I didn't have any ability to pay that. Whatever reason, I shouldn't be held as a responsible party. Or okay, this business didn't pay, $1 million worth of taxes. I'm sorry. Maybe at some point in time I could have done something to help that process, but I didn't. No, and now I have $1 million, and I don't have $1 million. So let me do something.
Yeah, then the IRS would rather get something rather than nothing.
I think.
We would hope.
Yeah. Some days I'm not sure of that, but yeah. That's
okay.
all right.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Tim.
All right. This is Hap May with a Legal Play.